Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk for a moment about something we've all felt but rarely admit out loud. That confusing space where someone's silence feels louder than their words. Today's topic is simple, but the truth behind it isn't when ignoring you means she's into you. Now, I'm not here to play games with your mind. I'm here to help you understand what's actually happening beneath the surface, because relationships don't get better through guessing. They get better through clarity, confidence, and communication. So let's peel back the layers, let's get real, and let's talk about what her silence might really be saying and what it absolutely is not. Silence is one of the most misunderstood aspects of human interaction. In relationships, especially in the early stages of attraction or interest, people often equate a lack of response, a delay in communication, or even moments of seeming disregard with rejection. They see it as a failure on their part, as though the absence of acknowledgement automatically signals disinterest or dismissal. This, however, is a misinterpretation. Silence, when carefully considered, can carry as much meaning as words themselves. It is, in many cases, not a signal of rejection at all, but a subtle form of communication that requires observation, reflection, and understanding. In the context of attraction, the person who appears to ignore you may in fact be signaling interest, but in a way that is measured, strategic, or simply reflective of their personality. To understand this, it is important to examine human behavior through the lens of attention and value. People do not spend their energy on what they do not consider meaningful. When someone with genuine interest refrains from immediate response, it is often because they are weighing their emotions, assessing the connection, or consciously creating a sense of space. Silence becomes a tool for gauging not only your reaction, but also your stability, your confidence, and your ability to navigate uncertainty. In other words, it is less about you and more about the way they manage their own emotions and intentions. Furthermore, silence is context dependent. A person may not reply to messages instantly, not because they do not care, but because their way of processing emotions or evaluating interactions differs from yours. Some individuals require time to think, to reflect on what is being said, or to consider how they want to present themselves. Others may be testing whether you are truly attentive, observant, or capable of understanding subtle cues. In these cases, what appears to be ignoring is actually a form of subtle engagement. It is their method of observing how you respond to uncertainty and how you carry yourself when the conversation is not immediate or constant. The interpretation of silence also relies heavily on past experiences and emotional conditioning. Many people are accustomed to equating silence with negative outcomes. They have learned that delayed responses are rejection, that quiet equals disinterest, and that attention must be reciprocated immediately to validate a connection. These conditioned assumptions often prevent the recognition that silence can be intentional, meaningful, and even attractive. Understanding this distinction requires stepping back and analyzing the behavior without the overlay of fear, ego, or self-doubt. By separating your assumptions from the actual actions, you can begin to see silence for what it truly is: a signal, sometimes deliberate, sometimes instinctive, but rarely absolute in its meaning. Moreover, silence is a natural human rhythm in communication. Not every response needs to be immediate, and not every absence of words indicates absence of feeling. People who are genuinely interested may use pauses strategically to create anticipation, to observe your reactions, or to test the depth of your interest. They may know that consistent engagement without a challenge can reduce the value of the connection, and so they modulate their attention. This is not manipulation in the negative sense, but an expression of a dynamic human interaction where timing, observation, and emotional intelligence play critical roles. It is also important to recognize that silence allows for projection. When someone does not immediately respond, it gives you the space to reflect on your own emotions, your level of interest, and your personal boundaries. In some ways, this silence encourages growth, self-awareness, and resilience. It prompts you to ask questions about what you truly feel, what you expect from the other person, and how much weight you place on external validation. In this sense, the lack of response can act as a mirror, reflecting back to you aspects of your own mindset while simultaneously offering a subtle signal about the other person's engagement. Finally, silence can be a sign of deliberate attraction rather than rejection. It can indicate that the person values a slower, more nuanced approach to connection. They may be testing compatibility, gauging emotional intelligence, or simply expressing a more introverted or contemplative personality. In these cases, the act of not responding immediately or of stepping back temporarily is not a dismissal but a method of deepening the intrigue, of creating space for anticipation, and of observing whether your interest persists without constant reassurance. When someone appears to ignore you, it is rarely as simple as a lack of interest. In many cases, this behavior stems from a deeper psychological mechanism: curiosity, evaluation, or the testing of interest. Human relationships are inherently complex, and people rarely reveal their feelings outright, especially in the early stages of attraction. Ignoring or appearing to ignore can be a deliberate tool used to understand your intentions, gauge your reactions, and measure your investment in the interaction. It is a way of creating a dynamic, subtle feedback loop where each person's actions inform the others, often without explicit communication. Curiosity is a natural driver behind this behavior. When someone is intrigued by you, they may step back at times to observe, to see how you act in their absence, and to discern the depth of your interest. Curiosity is rarely passive. It demands engagement, observation, and reflection. By ignoring you, a person creates a scenario in which they can watch how you respond. Will you overreact, show insecurity, or demonstrate patience and confidence? The way you handle the absence of immediate attention often reveals more about your character than any direct interaction could. In this sense, ignoring is less about rejection and more about collecting data, about gaining insight into your behavior, resilience, and consistency. Testing interest is another significant factor. People are naturally cautious when it comes to emotional vulnerability. To protect themselves from disappointment or premature attachment, they may employ what looks like indifference. This testing is not cruel. It is pragmatic. They want to know whether your interest is genuine, whether your investment is proportional to your words, and whether your attraction is consistent even when attention is withheld. In essence, ignoring becomes a filter, a way to distinguish between casual attention and authentic engagement. It forces the other person to demonstrate their intentions without relying on superficial affirmations or immediate feedback. Moreover, this behavior reflects an understanding of human psychology. People know that consistent availability can sometimes diminish perceived value. If someone is always immediately accessible, their presence becomes normalized and their impact may lessen. By occasionally withholding attention, they create space that allows their significance to grow in your mind. This is not manipulation in a malicious sense, but a natural mechanism in the way humans navigate social dynamics. By testing your interest through temporary absence, they observe whether your attraction is resilient, whether your attention is voluntary rather than compelled, and whether your engagement carries weight beyond convenience. Ignoring as a test also reveals much about emotional intelligence. Those who employ this method are often looking for reciprocity in awareness, observation, and subtle communication. They are interested in more than surface-level interaction. They are observing how you manage uncertainty, how you respond to delayed gratification, and how you maintain composure when the outcome is unknown. In other words, ignoring is sometimes a sophisticated strategy for evaluating whether the connection has depth, stability, and potential for growth. It requires patience, observation, and reflection to interpret correctly, which is precisely why it works as a measure of genuine interest. Additionally, The act of ignoring can serve as a mirror for your own behavior. It forces you to examine your impulses, expectations, and emotional patterns. When someone does not immediately respond or seems distant, it prompts self-reflection. How important is their attention to me? How secure am I in my own worth? Am I seeking validation, or am I engaging from a place of genuine curiosity and connection? By responding thoughtfully rather than impulsively, you demonstrate emotional maturity and an understanding of the nuanced dance that attraction often requires. In this way, their temporary absence is not just a test for you, but also a learning moment for both parties involved. It is also essential to recognize that ignoring can be context-specific and adaptive. People do not act in isolation. Their responses are influenced by mood, circumstances, and priorities. Someone may appear to ignore you not out of indifference, but because they are processing emotions, managing responsibilities, or calibrating how to engage effectively. This controlled withdrawal can be a way of maintaining equilibrium while still keeping the door open for genuine interaction. The test is subtle, almost invisible if you are not paying attention, yet deliberate in its design. Ultimately, when ignoring stems from curiosity or testing interest, it is a signal that the person is engaged in a thoughtful, albeit indirect, way. They are observing, assessing, and interacting strategically to ensure that any further connection is built on substance rather than convenience. By understanding this, you can approach the situation with clarity, patience, and confidence, recognizing that absence does not necessarily equate to disinterest, and that the nuances of human attraction often speak louder in silence than in words alone. Confidence is one of the most underestimated and misunderstood aspects of attraction. Too often, people believe that the key to capturing someone's attention is through constant engagement, relentless pursuit, or the accumulation of visible proof of interest. They think that if they can simply chase attention, respond to every signal, and be omnipresent in the other person's life, they will secure their affection. In reality, the exact opposite is often true. Confidence, more than any external effort, is the quality that naturally draws attention and creates authentic intrigue. It is not loud, brash, or performative. It is steady, measured, and rooted in a clear understanding of one's own worth and priorities. Confidence signals self-sufficiency. A person who is comfortable in their own skin, who does not rely on external validation to define their value, emits an energy that is both magnetic and stabilizing. When someone ignores you or tests your interest, as we discussed earlier, it is not a reflection of your inadequacy, but an opportunity to demonstrate that you are grounded, self-assured, and capable of maintaining your equilibrium regardless of external attention. This type of poise is far more appealing than frantic efforts to secure validation because it indicates that your attraction to someone is based on choice rather than necessity, on curiosity rather than desperation. Moreover, confidence allows you to navigate uncertainty with composure. In the early stages of attraction, mixed signals, delays, and periods of silence are inevitable. The person on the other side is observing, assessing, and forming impressions not only based on your words, but on how you carry yourself when there is ambiguity. Those who chase attention impulsively often reveal insecurity. They overcompensate, they overanalyze, and they allow external factors to dictate their emotional state. In contrast, a confident individual demonstrates emotional resilience. They can step back, reflect, and respond thoughtfully, signaling that their interest is deliberate and measured. This measured approach is inherently attractive because it establishes a sense of balance in the interaction. Confidence also communicates clarity of purpose. When you are secure in who you are and what you want, your actions are consistent and intentional. You do not bend to every signal or manipulate outcomes in an attempt to force attention. Instead, you operate from a place of agency, showing that your engagement is thoughtful and meaningful. This creates an impression of depth, signaling that your attention is valuable and that your interest is worth earning rather than simply taking. People are naturally drawn to individuals who exude this kind of intentionality because it offers a sense of stability, reliability, and authenticity in a world where superficial engagement is common. Furthermore, confidence fosters respect. When someone observes that you are not desperate for approval, they recognize that your boundaries are intact and that you value yourself independent of their actions. Respect is rarely commanded. It is cultivated through behavior, presence, and the way one responds to challenges. By demonstrating confidence in situations where attention is not guaranteed, you communicate that you are neither passive nor needy, but self-aware and discerning. This is far more compelling than chasing validation because it places the interaction on equal footing, where both parties are negotiating interest rather than one party pursuing while the other dictates terms. Another critical aspect is that confidence enhances perception. Those who chase attention often blur the line between genuine interest and forced engagement. They may misread signals, react impulsively, or project insecurities onto neutral actions. Confident individuals, however, have the ability to observe interactions objectively, to interpret behaviors without undue bias, and to respond in ways that maintain dignity and clarity. This observational capacity allows them to discern authentic interest from mere circumstance, creating opportunities to engage meaningfully rather than superficially. In this sense, confidence functions as both a shield and a lens, protecting emotional integrity while revealing the true dynamics of attraction. Confidence also encourages self-investment. When you are secure in yourself, your focus shifts from trying to earn attention to improving your own life, pursuing your goals, and cultivating your passions. This type of engagement is naturally magnetic because it communicates vitality, ambition, and independence. People are drawn to those who are busy building themselves rather than chasing others because it reflects an intrinsic value that cannot be artificially manufactured. By prioritizing self-growth, you demonstrate that your interest is genuine, deliberate, and based on mutual curiosity rather than obligation or dependency. Ultimately, the principle that confidence attracts more than chasing attention underscores a fundamental truth about human interaction. Value is not created through constant pursuit, but through presence, authenticity, and self-assurance. By embodying confidence, you position yourself as someone whose attention is worth earning, whose engagement is measured, and whose actions are deliberate. This approach shifts the dynamic entirely, transforming moments of ambiguity, silence, or testing into opportunities to demonstrate your strength, poise, and worth in a way that is inherently compelling. Mixed signals are one of the most confusing and frustrating aspects of human interaction, especially in the context of attraction. They create an environment where emotions are heightened, assumptions run rampant, and clarity often seems just out of reach. Yet, these signals are not necessarily contradictory or random. They are complex expressions of human thought, emotion, and behavior. The key is recognizing that mixed signals require careful observation, not assumption. When someone appears to act inconsistently, showing interest at one moment and seeming distant the next, it is rarely a simple reflection of rejection or manipulation. Rather, it is an invitation to look closer, to understand the underlying motivations, and to respond with measured insight instead of impulsive conclusions. Human behavior is inherently nuanced. People are rarely entirely predictable, and their actions are influenced by a variety of internal and external factors. Stress, fatigue, conflicting priorities, and even past experiences can all shape how someone communicates in the moment. When you encounter mixed signals, the tendency is often to impose a narrative, to assume that inconsistency equals disinterest or that absence signifies disregard. However, this approach oversimplifies the complexity of human interaction. Careful observation allows you to distinguish between moments of distraction, hesitation, or thoughtful consideration and true indications of disinterest. It creates the opportunity to engage with reality rather than perception, to see the person as they are rather than as you fear them to be. Mixed signals also often stem from testing boundaries or gauging compatibility. The person on the other side may be uncertain about how much interest or investment to show, and their behavior may oscillate as a result. They might step back momentarily to observe how you respond, to see whether your engagement is genuine, consistent, or reflective of emotional maturity. This fluctuation is not necessarily negative, it can be a sophisticated form of assessment. In these cases, assuming disinterest or rejection would be premature. Careful observation, looking at patterns over time, rather than isolated incidents, reveals the true narrative. Patterns show intent, while isolated moments can easily mislead and provoke unnecessary anxiety. Furthermore, mixed signals demand a focus on context. The same action can mean entirely different things depending on timing, previous interactions, and the individual's personality. A delayed response to a message might indicate a busy schedule, a need for personal space, or even a strategic pause to gauge your reaction. A seemingly dismissive comment may reflect stress or external pressures rather than emotional detachment. Observing behavior within context allows you to interpret signals accurately, distinguishing between temporary fluctuations and consistent patterns of disengagement. Assumption, on the other hand, often eliminates this crucial nuance, replacing careful assessment with bias, fear, or projection. Another important element is emotional regulation. When faced with mixed signals, it is easy to become reactive, to overanalyze, misinterpret, or act impulsively. Those who allow assumptions to dominate their interpretation often escalate situations unnecessarily, projecting insecurity onto neutral behavior and creating friction where none exists. Careful observation, conversely, encourages emotional patience and clarity. By stepping back, taking note of both verbal and nonverbal cues, and assessing behavior over time, you can respond deliberately, maintaining composure and control over your own emotional state. This approach not only improves your ability to understand the other person, but also communicates stability, confidence, and emotional intelligence, qualities that are inherently attractive and reassuring in any interaction. Mixed signals also highlight the importance of communication. While observation is critical, it does not replace the need for thoughtful dialogue. Understanding patterns and context provides insight, but clarity often requires asking questions, expressing curiosity, and establishing boundaries. The difference between observation and assumption lies in engagement. Observation seeks understanding, while assumption seeks to validate fear. By observing carefully, you gather information that allows for informed, measured conversation rather than reactionary conflict. It transforms uncertainty into insight, speculation into knowledge, and confusion into opportunity for genuine connection. Finally, recognizing mixed signals as a complex and informative aspect of human behavior shifts your perspective from reactive to proactive. Instead of letting fear, insecurity, or impatience drive your interpretation, you can rely on measured analysis, emotional intelligence, and thoughtful engagement. By doing so, you are able to differentiate between genuine interest, temporary distraction, and inconsequential behavior. Mixed signals cease to be a source of frustration and become a lens through which you understand human behavior more deeply, respond more effectively, and position yourself with clarity and confidence in the dynamics of attraction. Words are powerful, but they are only one dimension of human communication. In many cases, what is not said conveys more truth than what is spoken. Body language, the subtle and often unconscious signals we emit through posture, gestures, facial expressions, and movement often speaks louder than words. When interpreting attraction or interest, especially in situations where someone may seem to ignore you, these nonverbal cues are crucial. They provide a window into genuine emotion and intention that cannot always be masked by verbal statements, and understanding them requires careful observation, patience, and attention to nuance. Humans are wired to respond to physical cues. Before language existed, our ancestors relied entirely on visual signals to interpret intent, emotion, and social dynamics. This evolutionary trait has not disappeared. Even in modern times, we are highly attuned to nonverbal communication. A glance, a fleeting smile, a slight lean forward, or the way someone positions their body in your presence often conveys attraction, curiosity, or engagement more accurately than any words could. When someone appears to ignore you, it is these subtle indicators that reveal their true feelings beneath the surface. Recognizing and interpreting these cues is an essential skill for understanding the unspoken dynamics of human interaction. Facial expressions are among the most immediate and telling forms of body language. Microexpressions, those fleeting, involuntary movements that cross the face, often reveal genuine emotion before the conscious mind has a chance to filter or disguise it. A slight lift of the eyebrows, a subtle smirk, or a momentary sparkle in the eyes can indicate interest, amusement, or attraction, even when verbal communication is limited or ambiguous. Being observant allows you to notice these signals and interpret them accurately, providing insight into what the other person may truly feel, even when their words suggest otherwise. Posture and orientation also carry significant meaning. The way someone positions themselves in relation to you, whether they lean slightly toward you, angle their body to face you fully, or mirror your movements, can indicate comfort, engagement, and attention. Conversely, closed-off gestures such as crossed arms, turning away, or physically distancing themselves may reflect hesitation, discomfort, or a need for space. Importantly, these cues must be interpreted in context as they are influenced by personality, cultural norms, and situational factors. Careful observation over time allows you to identify patterns that signal genuine interest rather than relying on isolated gestures that could be misleading. Touch, even in subtle forms, is another critical element of body language. Light, casual touches, such as a brief brush of the hand or an accidental contact, can indicate comfort and attraction. People often communicate connection through proximity and physical cues before they articulate it verbally. Observing these subtle behaviors provides insight into their level of engagement and emotional openness. Those who are attuned to such signals can respond appropriately, recognizing moments of opportunity without overstepping boundaries or misinterpreting intent. Eye contact is particularly significant in revealing attention and interest. Sustained, intentional eye contact often signals focus, curiosity, and attraction, whereas fleeting or avoided eye contact may suggest discomfort, hesitation, or disinterest. Yet even here, context is key. Cultural norms, personality traits, and situational circumstances all influence how people use their eyes to communicate. By observing the frequency, duration, and quality of eye contact over time, you can discern patterns that reveal the other person's genuine engagement and emotional state. Gestures and movements, though often overlooked, also provide essential clues. The way someone moves their hands, tilts their head, or shifts their weight can indicate openness, attention, or attraction. Mirroring, when someone subconsciously mimics your movements or posture, is a particularly strong indicator of rapport and connection. These subtle cues are often more reliable than words because they operate below the level of conscious manipulation, revealing authentic emotional responses. Finally, recognizing the importance of body language emphasizes the broader principle that attraction is multidimensional. Words alone can be misleading, intentionally or unintentionally. Someone may claim disinterest verbally while their body conveys curiosity and engagement. By paying attention to these signals with care and nuance, you gain a more accurate understanding of their intentions, creating the opportunity to respond in a measured and confident manner. Body language, when interpreted thoughtfully, becomes a guide, a compass that points to genuine emotional truth in situations where verbal communication is limited, delayed, or ambiguous. Patience is one of the most overlooked yet powerful tools in understanding human behavior, particularly in matters of attraction. In a world driven by instant gratification, rapid communication, and constant social validation, the ability to wait, observe, and remain composed can feel counterintuitive. Yet, it is precisely this capacity for patience that often reveals true intentions and distinguishes genuine interest from fleeting attention. When someone seems to ignore you, it can be tempting to react impulsively, to seek immediate clarity, or to push for validation. However, exercising patience allows you to move beyond surface level interpretation and gain insight into the underlying motivations, desires, and emotional patterns of the person in question. Patience functions as a filter. Immediate reactions and responses often carry emotional noise, anxiety, insecurity, or projection. By stepping back and allowing time to pass before reacting, you can assess behavior more objectively, free from the distortions created by haste. In the context of attraction, this means resisting the urge to overanalyze a single text, a brief moment of distance, or a delayed response. True intentions are rarely revealed in isolated incidents. They emerge through patterns observed over time. Patience gives you the space to notice these patterns, to discern consistency, and to understand the broader narrative that might otherwise be obscured by immediate emotional reactions. Exercising patience also demonstrates emotional stability. People are naturally drawn to those who remain composed under uncertainty, who do not allow ambiguity to provoke desperation or overcompensation. When someone appears to ignore you, your ability to remain steady signals maturity, confidence, and self-respect. It communicates that your engagement is deliberate, measured, and not dictated solely by the presence or absence of attention. In other words, patience itself becomes a form of silent communication, revealing that your interest is grounded in choice rather than compulsion, and that your emotional state is resilient in the face of temporary uncertainty. Furthermore, patience allows observation of authenticity. Immediate reactions often obscure truth. They can exaggerate fears or desires and distort interpretation. By waiting, by observing, and by resisting the urge to force clarity, you allow the other person to reveal their intentions naturally. Genuine interest is consistent over time, resilient to small obstacles, and observable through repeated behaviors rather than single gestures. Those who exercise patience gain the advantage of seeing these authentic patterns unfold, distinguishing deliberate attention from fleeting or performative engagement. Patience also fosters self-reflection. When someone does not immediately respond, it provides an opportunity to assess your own behavior, desires, and expectations. Are you seeking attention to fill an insecurity, or is your interest rooted in genuine curiosity and connection? How do you manage uncertainty, and what does your reaction reveal about your own emotional intelligence? By using patience as a lens for self-assessment, you not only gain insight into the other person's intentions, but also develop a deeper understanding of yourself and the dynamics you bring to interpersonal relationships. Moreover, patience allows space for natural attraction to grow. Attraction is rarely linear. It develops through subtle interactions, shared experiences, and gradual emotional alignment. By forcing attention or seeking immediate validation, you risk compressing this process, pushing the dynamic into artificial or superficial territory. Patience honors the natural pace of connection, allowing interest to unfold authentically. It creates an environment where both parties have the opportunity to assess compatibility, establish trust, and engage with each other in a way that is thoughtful and intentional rather than reactive or performative. Another aspect of patience is the ability to observe testing behaviors without being manipulated by them. When someone uses temporary distance or ambiguous actions as a way to gauge your interest, patience enables you to respond with composure rather than anxiety. It transforms what might feel like a frustrating power dynamic into an opportunity to demonstrate emotional intelligence and measured engagement. In this way, patience is not passive. It is an active strategy, a conscious choice to maintain stability, observe carefully, and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Ultimately, patience creates a framework for clarity. It separates impulsive interpretation from informed understanding, emotional reaction from thoughtful observation, and superficial engagement from meaningful connection. By cultivating the ability to wait, to observe, and to respond deliberately, you allow the true intentions of the person who seems to ignore you to become apparent over time. Patience is the lens through which the hidden patterns of behavior, the subtle cues of attraction, and the genuine expressions of interest are revealed, providing insight that is impossible to achieve through haste or assumption.